Okay, we are recording. All right. Hello, everyone. It's me, Elijah Avalon, and welcome back to my channel. This is another installment of Mystic Meetings, where we talk to spiritual people about spiritual things. And today's guest is Crafton Magick. Thank you, Crafton, for being here.
Hello, hello. Hi, everyone.
Now, Crafton is in a coven and is in a coven with a previous guest of ours, Jasmine Ambrosia. Isn't that right?
Yep.
Can you
Yep.
tell us a little bit about your coven?
The only things I can say is that I'm within the Solar Court Coven, based in the Midwest. We've been active for a while now. And Jasmine is my high priestess. She's like my sister in the craft, my craft mother, and HP. So we kind of have like this, you know, almost all four suits, if you will, of tarot, if you will.
Awesome. So, Crafton, I start every interview with the exact same question.
Mhm.
And that question is, Crafton, why witchcraft?
Honey, why not? Um, so kind of to break that response down, right?
Right.
So I'm sure all the kids, you know what I mean, have had similar stories when it comes to the craft, in the sense of like, ever since I was a child, I watched, Scooby Doo and saw the Hex Girls. I knew I wanted to be that bitch,
Yeah.
and that,
Yeah.
to an extent, was me. Um, with being witch, or witchcraft wasn't a thing in my family. There have been rumors that there are certain ancestors of mine that were probably witches, and I definitely think they were doing the work.
Mm.
But I know my mother and my father or anybody else probably wouldn't say that, right?
Right.
So I don't know. My journey, especially with witchcraft, kind of started, I think, like everybody else's. I think we all had like this moment of either walking into a new age store, a metaphysical store, or a Borders. You know you're old when you're referencing a Borders or a Walden's Books. These are the old school stores. These were before Barnes and Nobles got capitalistic and took all of our books and made them Kindles.
Yeah.
But essentially, all of these, kind of experiences brought me to the craft, because it seemed like all the books I was like interested in were like on paganism and understanding like religion. Um, I will say too, I wasn't very picky. It wasn't like, I think nowadays we have more books that are like using the word witch or magic with CK. But back in like early 2000s, that wasn't the tea.
Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
was more of like, are you pagan? Are you Wiccan? And do you understand like the threefold law of, do you understand karma? We're never going to talk about dharma. So I'm sure I know I like went through a million and one books. I always asked my parents if I could buy books, and they were like, I mean, we'd rather her buy books than, go out and do like drugs or like smoke weed or something like that. So they're like, books, great, here we go. I don't know if they realized half the books I was buying. I don't know if they thought they were fantasy novels. They're like, there's dragons on the cover, there's trees everywhere. We had no idea. So I don't want to say they were unbeknownst to them kind of thing. I feel like they knew, but like they didn't want to know. I do remember, buying things like, I think one of my first decks was literally like some form of Doreen Virtue, like angel deck. And I literally only bought it because I was like, oh my God, it's pretty. They're cards and they're pretty. And witchcraft just kind of like took me in a hold. I had a BFF at the time that was like Wiccan, and she was in a coven, and I
Mm.
went to like her dedication ceremony that was very Wiccan based. Um, and after that, like, I mean, I knew as soon as I saw her, her candle literally blew out at the end of the ritual, and I literally saw her just kind of like look and stare at it, and then the flame came back, and that's where I was like, that's it. That's exactly witchcraft, and that's exactly what I want. I just didn't know how to put that into words.
Yeah.
So I feel like witchcraft too, over the last, now over 10 years, I will say, from when I was like 16 getting into the craft to now being like 30, it's a completely different ball game. I didn't realize until I got older how much like witchcraft like took care of marginalized communities. I didn't realize how much different types of conjure there were, how many different forms of ways you could work with herbs and like stones, and like all these things are coming from the earth. So to me, I was like, I mean, if this is like a thing, then this should be real. I don't see, I didn't really have an issue of being like witchcraft isn't real. I didn't really have that. I had more of like the battle between, is God, kind of like allowing this to happen versus is it the universe?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
So, were you raised in a particularly religious household?
Well, see, that part is funny because I would say my family was definitely more secular.
Hmm.
My family, I think for a while we went to church. I know my mother grew up in the church, but I think kind of as soon as she, came to a different part of the Midwest, then things were just different for her. She had like a full-time job. My dad was a construction worker, and she worked in corporate America. So there really wasn't time to be as religious and faithful probably as like my great grandmother was, because I think she was probably like the most devout, if you will. She believed that like God is one of us. Like you never know if a beggar could come to your door, which would happen all the time because she was a very loving and giving person with a completely pure gold of heart. Um, and essentially she just kind of believed in that. My mom was like, who the hell are these people? A beggar? Uh-uh. What are they doing in our house? They might steal from us. What are we doing? Um, so essentially I feel like everybody just kind of thought like we don't really have time for religion. Like I do have like some memories of going to a church. I don't really remember it being consistent, which is why I kind of, claim more of that secular background because it was there. It just didn't hit for me. I remember we watched Prince of Egypt. You know what I mean? Everyone who loves the Egyptian pantheon watched this movie,
Yeah.
right? So I remember, being like, Ra Ptah, Anubis. Like, I fell in love with Egyptology. I wasn't thinking about Moses and Jesus and splitting the ways. I was just like, oh, there are gods. I'm like, there's a jackal face like deity. I'm down. I had an Anubis pin like in third grade. Like it was a teen. So I'm just always like, this wasn't a religion to really follow. It was just kind of like it kind of went as things were. And now that I know my parents' astrological placements, it kind of makes sense.
So, was the Egyptian pantheon, Egyptian uh, theology, was that kind of your first like big interest in the magical like arena?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is funny to me because like, being that young and being one of those kids that wanted to do anything to like get something from the Scholastic Book Fair and getting like an Anubis pin and literally breaking down and crying when that pin stopped working.
Oh.
Ah! It was like my life is over. I've died. I've died. I've died. He's taking care of my body now. Um, but as time went on, um, when I was like trying to come back into the craft and I always tell the kids this, okay, because I'm more auntie in a lot of ways. But when it comes to the craft, if the craft wants you and you want the craft, it's going to pull you back. I tried, like, I don't know, like, life will kind of have these ways of like trying to pull you away from your religion. I always feel like that's the universe's game of being like, let's see if you really are into this. Let's see if this is really your life. And for me, that's what it kept doing. I kept having, tragedies happen. I lost both my parents within a course of like a 4 year gap. So for me, like it seemed like I was like, how am I ever going to get back on that path? And as most of the kids do, we end up living with somebody who ends up being a terrible mistake of a human being, and that's what happened with me. And it was funny because I just kind of fell back into like finding Egyptology to be a thing. And then I remember I met Jazz, and I remember like I had an Ankh tattoo and she had an Ankh tattoo. When it was like, there's not the Hex girls, we're the Ankh girls. And then kind of as time went on of like getting to know Jazz and like I guess like getting more in touch with somebody who was like open with their witchcraft. Because look, all my friends kept their stuff in a binder. Jazz lived her life out loud. And I was like, now hold on. Now hold on. How do we do this? All my friends have a bookkeeper, a binder for their book of shadows, and you have a tome. So as time went on, I remember getting readings from her and her just being like, girl, if you just don't pull these damn cards, you already know what half this means. And I'm like, girl, no, I'm gonna just keep paying you. Yeah, I'm not doing that. She was like, I strongly suggest you just go get a deck. So I looked on Amazon, I looked at a million decks online, and I was like, well, Egypt has always been my thing. Let me see if they have those. They had the Isis Oracle, and that was my first baby. I always tell people started with the Oracle deck, and now I'm here. The Isis Oracle honestly taught me so much. I still refer to that deck. I have the mini pocket version of that deck for the Girl on the Go life. That taught me how to do rituals. It taught me how to like see the gods in different ways. It told me and kind of taught me like, why does sisterhood like follow this kind of energy? Why did the gods like Hathor and Anubis and Ra and Horus and Osiris, like why did they all exist? How did they exist? And why did so many people follow these gods? So essentially, in a nutshell, it just kind of seemed like that was my baby. And I feel like those gods like always kind of like love on me the most, if you will, like when it comes to like a home pantheon, if you will. I always feel like, I can always be a daughter of Isis. I can always be a child of Anubis. You know what I mean? Like those are the gods that are like, baby, now hold on. Now I understand you're going to hex that person, but here's my thing. Have you thought of putting them in a mortuary? And I'm like, you're not wrong, Anubis. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Let's go.
It's funny. While you were speaking about, going through this tumultuous period of your life, after initially kind of having interest in magic, you went through this tumultuous period, and then you kind of went through this reformation or rebirth of yourself in devoting yourself to a magical path. And I think that's a through line for so many of us who follow the magical path. And I find it funny that there also seems to be a correlation between so many of us where we find some sort of psychopomp or like deity of death. For me, it was Morgan.
Oh.
But I love the fact that you kind of had this very Anubian experience of like, I'm intrigued by Anubis. I have this pin. I just it's cool.
Mhm.
But then Anubis sort of, themselves is like, oh, you like me? Well, embrace me. And like,
Oh,
kind of just
wow.
put you through
Yeah.
child relations.
Bass did that too. She did not play with me. Um, I wanted a black cat. My partner of the time was like, "What would you name her?" And I was like, "Well, Luna, duh, Sailor Moon,
Yes.
like, duh, come on now." And I legit remember being with him in a Ross dress for less. And he runs up to me and he's like, "Hey, is this like an Egyptian thing?" And it's literally a statue of Bast. And I'm like, "Yes. How much is it?" $13. I said,
Mm.
"Okay, 13 moon cycles." I ran to the counter so fast. 2 weeks later, I got my Luna. He was terrible, but I really think the gods, like, I really feel like the gods made him do all this stuff because I have statues from that man. I have a cat from that man. They were like, "Make sure you give her a cat. She likes ice. Give her that. Uh huh. Uh huh. Give her more gold. Have you thought about black roses? Yeah. Uh huh. Give her all that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I don't. She doesn't think you're good enough. I didn't even think like that, but I feel like that's what the gods would say. And I feel like she doesn't think you're good enough. So you're just gonna have to really like do better with these gifts and these offerings. Cause that man spent like over $150 on these statues. And I'm just like, no.
So, speaking about deity in correlation with witchcraft, do you think that witchcraft is inherently pagan, or do you think those are two separate things?
I think they're two completely separate things.
So, how would you define just witchcraft? Like, what is it?
Witchcraft is what you do. Witchcraft is a verb. Um, as someone who has taught, classes on like runes, Viking is not who you are. It's what you do to become
Hmm.
Viking. Like so many people think Viking is a noun and it's really a verb. You would go Viking. And same thing with being a witch. Witchcraft teaches you to be witch. If you're not, divining with the gods and, figuring out the numerology of the day as you do. If you are not tapping into these cosmic forces, these like dark goddess currents, these like currents to the gods, these cosmic and celestial like energies. If you're not attuning yourself to the moon, if you're not tuning yourself to the phases of life and the shifts of the seasons, babe, that's not paganism to me. Paganism is like you worship the earth. Witchcraft is you work with what is here in the physical, the digital, and the astral, is how I feel.
Yeah. So, someone can be a pagan and not be a witch,
All the time.
and someone can be a witch but not be a pagan.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same of like, if you put all us witches and all these pagans, and anybody who is in a part of an alternative religion, we may have similar pathways that we all think leads to our own truth. We may have some things we disagree with, but at the end of the day, like we're all different.
Yep. 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 So, if paganism is over here,
Hmm.
witchcraft is over here,
Hmm.
but sometimes they kind of do this.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is Wicca a third sphere here, or is Wicca in that pagan bubble?
I think it would depend because Wicca is a religion,
Mm-hmm.
and Wicca is the religion that we essentially have partaken in in different ways without realizing it, I feel like, because it was the, I'm going to say, and I say this like more so loosely, supreme religion for us, because it was the one that kind of got us out of like being in the middle of the woods and being hunted. Not that that's still not happening in different countries.
It's kind of
Because
happening in the South right now.
this is what I'm saying. Like, the witches are still being hunted. The
Mhm.
witches are still being persecuted, maimed, stoned, killed, murdered. The
Yeah.
thing is with Wicca, that was what said, okay, Wicca is peaceful. Like, it takes the claws off of the witches. It takes the claws off of the flying ointments that we use. It takes the claws out of the poison path. It takes the claws out of these ideals of self deification. It essentially makes us like these small, innocent beings, as opposed to ravage and, how can I say, passionate beings of cosmic energy. Like, Wicca to me was like our way of being like, here's the popular vote. Now, anybody who has looked into Gardner, Doreen Valiente, the Alexandrian tradition, the Gardnerian tradition, we know by our history of those mighty dead that came before us, that these were not tame religions. But as time went on, you know, like half the books I read when I was younger, Scott Cunningham, for instance, I mean, he was one of the first people to be like, you can dedicate yourself. You don't need initiation. You don't have to be initiated. And that's kind of a good way, in a sense, of understanding self deification, but that's not absolutely the same way of coven versus solitary. Because, yeah, I would hope you could initiate yourself and have a nice, bath, or bathe in the springs and get into your earth power and make your crescent cookies and your cakes and ale. I would hope you could do all those things. But actual Wicca is like God and goddess. Sometimes it's turfy. Sometimes it's like completely against the queers, even though the queers have what made it beautiful. The queers are what took the religion, from a cis white man's hands and said, bitch, this shit's in Hot Topic now. You want a triple moon goddess pendant, you can go to the Hot Topical, or you can go to the Spencers. Like, we made it cute. We made it what it is. But all these kids are like, yeah, I like really am like Wiccan. And I'm like, okay, cool. Do you know Gardner? And they're like, what? I'm like, baby, until you start sitting down and reading about that old white man who got initiated in his 50s and 60s, baby, don't talk to me about Wicca. You're listening to the Harmony Nice channel. You're listening to all these other, it's really nice if you just kind of follow like your devout feelings of what you really want to do. And it's like, you wouldn't even have that path if somebody didn't walk it before you, babe. Like, you gonna have to put them on the altar, baby.
Yeah. So are you someone, which I think you just answered this question, but are you someone who thinks that there should be a sort of respect and learning and acknowledgement of history um, on the magical path? You think that history is important to know and
Yeah,
respect and to pay homage
absolutely.
to? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I say that because, like, I don't know, I will definitely say in the very beginning of my path, I mean, like, closet witchery was definitely a thing. Like, like, I remember just being happy to find tea lights all in the elemental colors one day at a Meyer for like $3. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't even have incense. Okay. Like the kids don't understand.
Yeah,
Like it's one thing when you're trying to come out of the closet. It's another thing when you're coming out of the broom closet.
totally. Totally different. Yes.
And I don't think people understand like how like I don't know. How can I say this in a way that makes some more sense? But if you don't know who came before you, how in the hell are you going to walk the same path they did? And here's my thing, your path is going to be completely different.
Hmm.
You do not have to take every little thing Gardner said and it weighs, you know what I mean, way more than what work you've put into yourself, into your craft. But I definitely do think you can get a lot of ideas of why certain things were interesting, popular, and a part of this kind of like spiritual awakening that Wicca created. Like, once you realize that, like, the horn god and, the triple goddess are out here being like brother and sister, and then Mrs. and Mr., you know what I mean? Once you know that's the reason why the Wiccan Reed says what it does, once you know why we need to banish going counterclockwise and clockwise to like manifest and bring in, I mean, it just might help you. It
I think
might help.
I think it's a lot like hiking,
Mhm.
where it's so fun to just go out into nature and immerse yourself and to hike and explore and go off the path and find
Absolutely.
new areas.
Mhm.
But it's important to carry a map with you
Okay.
because if you're going to explore and make new paths, you
Mhm.
at least have the path back home, on a piece of paper
Yes.
for you.
Yes. Like you
Yeah.
got to know your home frequency. You got to know your home base. You got to know that like how can I say it? It's like there's so many like high priestesses and high priests that are writing these books. There are people who are absolutely a part of their religion writing books about the stuff they're learning. They're creating content, literature, videos, audiobooks, and everything else so that that initial concept that may have started from Gardner, from Crowley, from any of these, unfortunately, cis white folk, mostly cis white men, Poor Doreen Valiente didn't have a chance. She was like, I'm just gonna write this, and this white man Gardner just gonna do his job. Okay, okay, that's what he's there for. But it's like we just don't have a lot of that. It's like almost everybody wants to do what they want, but at the same time, like I know my spell work, like definitely. How can I say it metamorphosized once I started looking at like lunar mansions and looking at like lunar astrology and why does the dark moon mean this and why does the full moon mean that, like it's like it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
It's not just sitting there.
I think that practicing magic, be it witchcraft or some other vessel, requires, well, particularly witchcraft though, forces you to kind of like remove your ego from the situation.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people think that they know what is best at all times and that they're smarter than everyone else around them. I think that we're all inherently made that way. And so you want to discredit the work of other people because you're like, well, they don't know about me though and how I work magic. They don't know about
Mm.
me and my power. I think you have to humble yourself and say, well, not say, but realize other people have come before you and lived entire lives and had entire experiences that very much can mirror the one that you're having now. So to take just advice and to take notes from someone else's shared living experiences does not diminish your own power. It adds to your power.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. You spoke earlier about Wicca and the rise of Wicca and how it made it safe. It made witches safe for the
Hmm.
mainstream community. It took the claws from them, you said, and the venom.
Hmm.
And do you think that witchcraft is inherently how do I say this? Do you think it is inherently a neutral field, or do you think it is more good than bad, or do you think it's like dark and negative and bad, like so much of the media portrays it?
So the media will portray it the way they need it to because they still need to spin this kind of like subverse Christian narrative.
Yeah.
Like, like to me, it's I don't know. It's this idea of like if we make it look bad, then more people are going to push themselves into these churches that don't pay taxes. Weird. I
Yes.
don't know. That's always been a very big question to me. I'm like, where does that money go, baby? Where does that money go? It
Yeah.
cannot be paying Beyonce's bills. I just don't believe it.
Yeah.
I also think too, people, the way people perceive magic is the way they perceive people of color.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Because, you know, and I've seen it tons of times. I mean, hell, like especially when like teaching classes in runes, Norse mythology, you know, unfortunately, people like Freya Oswin still exist. And like, you know, she definitely came away for that community. I mean, hell, I believe she was even initiated into Gardnerianism first. So it's not like she wasn't initiated into something before she went down the Norse path. I mean, hell, her god spouse is literally Odin, you know. But a lot of the books that she has written, which I own many of them. Um, you know, bless Freya, but she basically was like, "Girl, we gonna get away from the man folk, and we're gonna get into the goddess. Okay, we're gonna understand the state there." And I'm like, "You're right." So like all my references from books, like I don't have Blum. I don't have Blum nowhere in my library back here. I don't have that. I have women. I have women representation. But unfortunately, she was one who was like, well, there are people I think, who do get called by Freya, Loki, Odin, you know what I mean? Crazy. Tear sometimes. There are people of color, but I cannot tell you, baby. Can't tell you why, how, or what. But I do believe they do practice this religion. Yeah, they definitely do. And I'm just reading this book like it's the caucasity for me. I'm like, bitch.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah.
I don't I don't understand. You know what I mean? Why people think like people of color just have a completely different way of practicing because as a black person, I'm non-binary, highly hyperfemme presenting here, but when it comes to being a black person, the struggle usually is not just the patriarchy but the caucasity on top of it. Because so many people want me to be soft, kind, nice, and all red bone energy, and I'm woman, and all these things. And it's like, I see what sis is saying. She's saying we come from dark matter, but she's saying it in a way that's a little bit, homophobic as well.
I
She's
believe that just because a white person joins the magical community
Mhm,
in whatever title or path they choose
mhm.
or are called to, does not mean that that white person is immediately alleviated
Nope.
of the societal
Mhm,
and systemic indoctrination
mhm.
that white people go through on how to treat others that are not white.
Right.
Yeah. Just
Mhm,
because suddenly you're a heathen or you wake up one day and you're like, I'm going to be a witch, does
mhm.
not mean that suddenly you are not racist.
Right. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what I've dealt with for over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Especially being in these spaces. I stay in these spaces, I say my truth, because I remember there wasn't anybody before me in my local community. Like, I didn't know a root worker. I didn't get to know anybody who practiced Santeria. I had to get closer into like my later 20s until I found somebody who said like their grandmother actually practiced, you know what I mean, and did the good work, as we like to say. But it's like they don't understand that, like, that the being a minority, we're still the minority. There doesn't matter how much there are of us. It's that we're still being claimed as being these savages, these Negroes, these N-words.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like they want to take, anything Wicca and be like, oh, the goddess in all her phases and all her forms. So what about the dark moon? You know what I mean? What about Kali? What about Sekhmet? What about these goddesses that don't bleed?
Yeah.
I remember when I was like in my early 20s just reading about like Sekhmet, and it was so beautiful to me how they said she holds in the wise blood, and then she's coming from a whole other land where you're of color. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, yes, I vibe with this. I understand this. I can appreciate this. This is a wealth of knowledge. This is a wealth of curriculum, vocabulary, even. The terminology is off the chain.
Yeah.
But so many people feel like Wicca is safe. So many people feel like Wicca is easy. And it's like, baby, 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 baby.
Yeah.
They make it look easy. The silver raven wolves of them all want to make it look easy.
Yeah.
Like Raymond Buckland never made me feel like Wicca and witchcraft was easy. If anything, I felt like, oh, I'm gonna have to do more studying.
Yeah.
My to know is not there.
If I can be super candid for a moment, I grew up in a Black neighborhood my whole life. I was one of two white families in the neighborhood. So I grew up beside this family who are wonderful. Their last name is Summerhill, and they're amazing.
Oh.
And we grew up as friends, and our mothers were friends, and our family was very intermingled. Mm-hmm. I also grew up with grandparents who practiced Southern folk remedies, Southern folk medicine, what we would call like conjure, right? And they would always, I mean, it's the reason I wear a Buckeye necklace, but they would always say, we learned this from Uncle Roy. We learned this from, and I never knew who these uncles were because they were long deceased.
Right.
So our neighbors would always talk about an Uncle Roy or an Uncle Ray, and how he taught them how to, heal a wound with certain plants and et cetera, things that aren't witchcraft but are witchcraft.
Okay.
Because my family and this family were both very devout Christians, right? Well, one day we found out that the photograph we had in my house of said Uncle Roy was also a photograph in their home of their Uncle Roy.
Right.
And we were like, why is my family member in your house? So we started comparing, my mother and their mother started comparing the family trees and realized that our family tree was the same family tree.
Oh.
And that is when a lot of secrets came out about, and this is where I'm being very candid and vulnerable as a white person. But but we found out that my great 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 grandfather had some slaves
Yeah.
and had sensual times
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
slaves and
Right.
created the Summer Hills.
Okay.
So
Did some planting, baby. Put
yeah,
some planting on that hill.
yeah, yeah. So I say that because one, I think it's really crazy, but two, I am someone who does practice conjure,
Mm-hmm.
root work, something that is seen now as a black practice, and it's seen as like a black. I was gonna say black magic, but you know what I mean, like a
Mm-hmm.
melanated magic.
Mm-hmm. It's like
Um,
him for me.
and it's not my. It's I can't open the doors for other white people to that.
Right.
The door was opened to me almost in a wrong way through privilege,
Right.
as my family was teaching me things that were our family's remedies.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them might be going back to Scotland, where my people came from.
Right.
But I'm sure there's a lot of Summerhill stuff in there,
Oh,
like probably the Buckeye necklace.
okay.
And I bring all that up because you were talking about, specifically heathen spaces are so predominantly white.
Highly.
And they really, I'm generalizing here to any of our viewers who do practice Norsey stuff, but a lot of them can be very, very racist, like
Mm-hmm.
outwardly racist, like vocal and proud racist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I find that in the Southern folk magic, cunning work, conjure work space that I am in, the white people in it can be the same way. In
Mm-hmm.
a space that's
Mm-hmm.
already 99% black, though, so it's really weird.
Yes.
And I said earlier that just because you are white doesn't mean you're immediately granted some title of enlightenment the minute you get onto a magical path.
Right.
And I was lucky in that because I was raised around and in a black community,
Mm-hmm.
and as the white person, I was like the weird one in the community. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like most people would say the black people are the bad element in the community.
Right.
In the black community, we were the weird ones there that were like, why are you here?
They said, baby, I can get you some chicken. You hungry?
Why are
Yeah.
you here though?
They're like, here's my thing, baby. You don't need the Campbells. I can make you something from scratch, baby. Something that really turn your heads.
Yeah, or they're like, there's other things besides salt and pepper. So
Woo!
let's talk
Woo!
about it. But anyway,
Big on a garlic salt.
I bring that up. I bring that up because that experience from an early age helped me see that when I was not in my neighborhood, how my neighbors were treated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was very shocking and strange to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are just my neighbors. These are my friends. These are my family members. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why come to my community, my neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and treat them this way in their own turf?
Literally.
So that's my note to the people in the conjure world. But in the northern space, you at some point, I guess, right, as we all do, naturally kind of go through interests and are pulled to different areas of the magical path.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you found the Norsey space, right? When was that for you?
I want to say 2018, 2019, the before times. The reason I actually did, and my bestie, praise be to them. So essentially after my father had passed, and then a few years later my mother had passed, my best friend was getting into understanding, their family tree because they also experienced a passing. And he was he gifted me a, ancestry test so I could kind of like see what more is out there, because I basically had like I know like the very first um ancestor in my line, as far as I believe on my father's side, but my mother's side it's like big question marks. So I could only go so far back on either side. So he gave me the test, I sent it in, and I'm thinking, what if I just got like just a good little 5% Egyptian? That's this ISIS, call, you know what I mean? I would just not be shocked. All my friends were even saying it because they knew they were like, one of my friends called them the Yu-Gi-Oh cards because they were just so big. And he was just like, them Yu-Gi-Oh cards, girl. And I was like, it's ISIS. He's like, I know who she is. I'm like, I know you do, Mr. Kemet. He knew a lot of Kemeticism, thankfully, but that's what he always joked. He was like, them big Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I'm like, oh my lord. So I got the test back, and I remember because I think I literally was with the coven, or I was talking to them or something, and I'm legit. I remember my jaw dropped because your girl had like a good 10-15% Norse.
Oh, wow.
Right.
That's a big chunk.
Okay. I was like, oh, so this is where that like this kind of weird skin tone's been a thing. Because me and my father were the lightest
Mm-hmm.
of my family. Like I think everybody else on my father's side is mm, they got probably a little bit closer to these colors. You know what I mean? They got a little bit more taupe in them, a little more sandstorm, And some of them, I mean, it is like um damn near ebony. You know what I mean? But we've just always been a light breed.
Yeah.
We're the honey wheat bread, if you will. And the struggle was like, I was like, wait, what? Because here's like your background, and you're like thinking all these years, which people of color who have a background knowing that they're mixed is one thing, but coming up into your 20s and finding out you got this, I have some Scottish, you know what I mean? There was like the smallest percent of Greece in there, and I'm like,
Mhm.
well, that's from me working with Hecate, I think. There's like a tiny percentage of Algerian. It's just random. I'm just like,
Wow.
I just thought we was black as hell.
You are of the world.
I really am. So going into that, I was like, well, I had already been looking into like the Orishas in a way. And I was like, okay, like maybe that's the calling, still love them. Oya's my girl. Love her. I've just always been pulled in by her. Probably more than like Oshun or Yemaya.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the kids know why. These cemetery gates, if you will. But I remember kind of being like, I literally remember being with Jazz, and I'm like, what the hell do I do? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I'm very big on my first pillar. So my research and my to know are always like spot on. Okay. Like 99% of the time, I'm researching something. Can't tell you what, can't tell you why. I've already Googled it. I've already tried to figure it out. Try to go back 20 generations if I can. Okay. I'm very good at that. I'm the CIA. I am the FBI. Okay. But when looking into that, I'm like, what in the hell do I do? Because like I've been kind of like marry me, with the Egyptian. Do I go Norse? And she's like, I mean, you can. And I'm like, can I? The I was like pulling up the blogs, and I'm like, these kids, they only go with one person. And she's like, right, but you can do two. You can do two pantheons. And I was like, how? How? And that became the journey. Because funny enough, if everybody knows that cute little amethyst rune set that you can see on the Amazon, I remember always wanting to get those, like, way back in the day, like 13, 14 years old in a metaphysical store. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And I just remember, I can't remember if somebody told me, like, oh yeah, those are like kind of Norse, and you know what I mean? Like, that might not be your tea. Or if, like, inherently I was just like, I think I'm not supposed to touch those. But I want to, but I can't. But I want to, but I can't. You know, we were having one of these. But overall, I was just like, well, maybe I need to get into runes, I guess. I don't know. Those were kind of like my thing, but I just never thought about it because, I mean, if you're one of the Scott Cunningham book kids, you remember in the back of the book when he was like the health and wealth rune, and he was like Feyhus for this and, you know, Joyce for that. I literally remember writing with a Sharpie on my wrist, which now has witch now on it, this same wrist, writing like Wunyo on there when I was having bad days or anxiety and things like that. So I'm like, well, maybe that is a tea. Okay. So I traveled on yonder, as you do. And like, it was really interesting because it was like, okay, I have this knowledge. What do I do with it? And Jazz, you know, she's a big initiator. Okay. She's an initiator. I'm a fixer. I'm like, okay, you need to align this to the left, put that element here, design it this way. She's like, no, just do it. And I'm like, doing what? What? He's like, you should teach a class. And I'm like, on what? Isis? She's like, the runes. Yeah, I can see it. She's like, I see it. And I'm just like, okay, I guess. So she was like, are you doing your homework? And I'm like, yeah. And I was typing fast and typing all this information up of like how I aligned with it and how I worked with this energy. And I'm very glad I did it because being a person of color, these very white neo-Nazi ass motherfucking spaces, they are always the ones who are looking for these like long blonde haired like Lagratha girls, and it's like, honey, it me. I'm like, baby, I'm blessed with an Aries moon. I got everything you need to go Viking. I mean, damn. You need me to kick somebody's ass or what? I'm down.
Do you think that it's required to have German, Russian, Swedish, any kind of like Anglo-Saxon Nordic blood in order to practice any type of Norse paganism or magic?
Hell no. That was my story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how, you know, I started casting runes and now I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, but not everybody's story is like that. I know so many people who will follow my DMs over the last few years and they'll be like, somebody I knew, I used to do readings from them, and now they do their own readings. I think they're out in New Orleans now. And they told me that one of their clients came to them and they literally gave them an entire bag of tiger eye based runes. And I was just like, what? I was like, well, I told you a year and a half ago to just get into the game, but you be playing games and this keeps happening. And I remember I really wanted to do a class on the gods because I was like, you know, there's this big idea that like if you don't connect to those gods, you can't read runes.
Mm-hmm.
I could read runes before I got to the gods. If anything, I went backwards. As you do. So you know, I again went down my path. I have an array of books back here. I have an entire library just on the Norse pantheon. And then I started making my crash course on the Norse Pantheon class because I was just like, how can I tell people how amazing these gods are and how amazing runes are? So I was like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I had already done my, beginner's runes class. So I was like, now, before you take that class, you need to take Crash Course on the Norse if you want to learn about the gods. You don't have to. It ended up being a good turnout. A lot of people really enjoyed it. I basically was just like, here is the meat and potatoes of the mythology. I've done the research. I've cut it down. You don't have to get the big book until after this class. Okay? If you really want more, that's when you get the resources. And I can tell you, definitely, these will be the best ones. And then after that, then came bind runes, because my first spells were with bind runes. Like, it's easy for me to come up with like a bind rune for money and success and health and wealth and joy, and I can bring sorrow and pain to certain folks when they need to be put in their place. Literally some of my first invocations were literally using the runes and being like, Kanaz is of this, Kanaz literally looks like the Pac-Man. So it literally looks like that. And all the kids are like, what? And I'm like, it's like this, the Waka Waka. The Waka Waka. Wunyo is just like it's just like a triangular P. If you give somebody a flag, a red flag or a white flag, it's Thorsaz. Like, I just started coming up with these things, and it's easy. And also too, if you're a girl on the go and does a lot of like chime magic, like using like more with chimes than like big novenas or pillars and stuff like that, then it's simple. You only got so much space. You got to be like, okay, we need the money. Fehu, right. But I want it consistently. Dagaz on top. Right. But put a little Wunyo, because I want it to make me happy. Want joy from it. Like, it's just inherent,
Yeah.
And to me, I just think it just kind of became a thing. So now it's like a whole 3-in-1 course. And that's what I'm kind of trying to work on now. If I want to like push myself to like being on Patreon, to where people can like actually have that content and like work with it, because unfortunately capitalism calls and I have bills to pay, and I have a 9 to 5, you know what I mean, for now. And I just kind of feel like, if people really still want that content, they should still be able to have it. And also too, sometimes I don't have the time to teach a full class anymore. That way they can kind of teach themselves, and if they have questions, they can still reach out to me. I'm still a resource. You're never too far away. I still kick it with Freya. There's a class on her too, actually.
I was going to say, just a fun question. In the Norse pantheon, who is who are the 3? Like, who are your faves?
Oh, God. Oh, my faves?
Yeah, and you can do like 3.
Freya, Loki. Scotty.
Oh.
Loki is one of the, and I think we've done a live about this before, but like literally trans representation is the metamorphosis and the changing and the shape shifting for me. The glamours are galore in their mythology. Freya, funny enough, I just really wanted to do a class on one of these gods, and like I always do, I just pull cards on it. And out of everybody, I even asked Odin, I'm like, yo, a class, what you thinking? And he was like, I said, Thor? Because Thor was one of my big daddies. Like, he was like, he's my muscle. He's like, what they trying to do? I'll be damned. He's my muscle guy. So I was like, Thor. door. And he was like, and I'm like, what? I was like, what do I do? So I got to Freya, and for those who do use Rider-Waite-Smith, like, I got cups, hells yes. Like, she was like, yeah, girl, it's me. And I was like, wait, what? Huh? She, her, me? Me? You will. Huh? You have imposter syndrome sometimes. I don't think people understand that, like, I work with deity, not archetypally. I work with deity as deity. Their mythology tells me about their personality, but the work I do with them is the relationship I've built with them. So for me, the most archetypal I can get with Freya when I was creating her class was really understanding, like, the High Priestess card and Queen of Wands. That's kind of how I got closer to her, understanding the vulva aspects of her, and how using trance prophecy by working with hell and going to that Niflheim realm is kind of more of, like, that vulva aspect. It's not just her running around with, like, her falcon cloak and, like, being like the Norse version of Aphrodite. You know what I mean? So I got closer to her in that regard. And I think people get so confused as I was, because they're always like, so girl, Apollo's calling to me, but I'm not sure. I pull a card. The Sun card. Yeah, he is. I think go ahead. I don't know, girl. I don't know if Artemis is calling me or not. The Moon card. Yeah, she is. Go ahead.
So before we start winding down here in a little bit, pretty soon, I want to ask you something that's controversial.
Oh.
But first, I just want to say that I love hearing about your experiences and your obvious passion and love for the Norse, like, realms. Like, I love it so much. I love hearing people be passionate about things that they're passionate about. I love seeing that light come up in someone. And you know what I mean?
Yes. I love that in the new kids of the witch generation. Like, when they get really like, so I just really got into using basil. And I'm like, for a prosperity spell for the girl on the go, though, have you thought of the entire bottle of Italian seasoning?
I like hearing the seasoned witches.
Yes.
I love hearing people who have been on the path for a while get reinvigorated and find passion again. That's what I love. And I mean, all love to the newbies and the babies, but the crones and sages, I like hearing from them and hearing them just come alive with something like that. So I thank you. And yes, I just called you a crone, bitch.
Okay. We getting in our auntie era.
Your journey with runes into the Norse pantheon really mirrors a lot of my own journey with Ogum or Ogham. I know there's, like, pronunciation fights in the Celtic world. But my journey with Ogum led me in a similar vein as you. So I find that very fascinating and interesting. And I just want to say that my favorite Norse deity is Uller. He's so unsung. So unsung. People always think he's just a god of skiing.
Yes.
He's so much more. He served as the leader after Odin for a time.
Literally. Yeah. He literally sits on the damn throne when the man's gone. I don't think him and Tyr are the second daddies that nobody thinks about.
Yep. That's my shout out to Uller, because he knows I love him. But controversial question.
Okay.
And it is controversial.
Okay.
More so probably for some of our viewers, I think. But
it'd be like that.
we're in a time socially
Mm-hmm.
where everyone is becoming or has become a lot more aware of privilege,
Mm-hmm.
be that racial privilege, societal privileges through money, through
Mm-hmm.
privilege, all kinds of privileges.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has led to some of those people in privileged spaces, white folks, to become really scared and nervous about what they can say, what they can't say, what they can do, what they can't do, because they're like, was I secretly a racist the whole time? You know, and that's a whole nother discussion.
Right.
Um, but white folks need to do the work. But anyway,
Every day. Every day.
yeah, because we all racist. Sorry about it.
Right.
We
Right.
all racist. So
Right.
look at yourself. But anyway. Uh, I think that some people get confused by the idea of closed practices,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel like they're being attacked or they're being kept from something.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in such a global community now where information is shared so freely
Mm-hmm.
and so openly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also adds to people's misunderstanding of a closed practice,
Yes. Yes.
and specifically closed practices that are seen as a practice dominated or started by or persevered through or maintained by people of color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that white people, I'm mostly speaking about white people here, I think it's no secret, but I think that a lot of white people think, well, should we or can we close our practices, our heritage-based practices, like the heathenry,
Mm-hmm.
like the Celtic Reconstructionists, like some of the Druids?
Mm-hmm.
Can you? I hate to make you be the
Hey,
voice for people of color.
hey, I could do it, honey.
Yeah,
I could.
but I need to understand that, like, we're. It's annoying, but I'm forced to be the voice for gay men all the time. So,
Mm-hmm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
even though I don't
Mm-hmm.
represent all gay men, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that said, can you explain to people who just are not understanding
Right.
why something like hoodoo and voodoo, or something like Shinto,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
other, and like even parts of Hinduism,
Mm-hmm.
can you explain to people who just are not getting it why some of those practices are closed,
Mm-hmm.
and what does it mean to be a closed practice?
So a closed practice to me, and I think white people get confused when they hear closed.
Mhm.
I think when they hear that terminology, they're like, oh, it's being kept from me. Huh. And then I think the inner colonizer, you know what I mean? Which, honey, I got 15% or whatever. I get it. Sometimes it'd be like, oh, I should have access to all your things.
I
It's
think that's
just
an American problem too.
that
Our
it
ideology of
highly
Americans is that we're the best, we get everything we want.
literally, and it's just like, babe, it's here's my thing. The closed to me is what we would say through like Thoth, in the Egyptian pantheon of the moon. These are the hidden mysteries. These are the emerald tablets. These are the things that, like, babe, if you don't know, you just don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I can't teach somebody that, and this isn't really a closed practice to you, but this is just something that kind of came to me. I can't teach somebody why I have to code switch in certain areas.
Yeah.
I can't teach people why my voice will change depending on the groups that I'm comfortable in and not. I cannot give you the experiences of why, when I walk into a room full of white people wearing, my scarf or a bindi, or if I'm wearing like my Lilith necklace, or, if I'm wearing palmistry earrings, like I cannot tell you why, when I walk into these spaces, I have to change my demeanor to keep my job, to keep my, footing on the ground, to make sure that I'm grounded and I'm standing in my sovereignty, and you can just stay mad at it.
Yeah.
I can't teach somebody that. That's a hidden mystery
Yeah.
until you are in my shoes, which you won't be, at least in this lifetime. At least in this lifetime, you cannot get it. I can't tell you what's going on behind certain walls because those are walls you are not going to have information to. It's always the same thing of solitary versus covenry. You know what I mean? Like everybody's always like, well, I don't think covenry should be a closed practice. Well, you're not initiated in our coven for us to give a damn. Like, sorry and shit, but it's like you're not here. You have not gone through the trials and the tribulations to be in this room. You don't have access to our home and our home frequency. That is a privilege for us to give to you. You have to, present yourself in a certain way for us to even look at you. And same with being solitary. As a witch, I'm always going to have my own practice. But what I do with my coven is what I do with my coven. As, a hyper femme presenting non-binary person, I am not going to be able to tell you what, my dysphoria feels like. Recently, to be very candid, I got a breast reduction. I'm like a whole other bitch now. Like I couldn't even, in the spaces that I was going into after my surgery, I can't even explain to people what I'm going through because it's such an internal thing for me. So it's a lot of like staying in the shadows for some things. There's some things my sisters, my family, my partners won't understand because they've not had a breast reduction.
Yep.
So it's like I can't explain to you in terms of tarot, like the major arcana events I'm going through. I can just only tell you that, like, yeah, sometimes I'm hermit upright and reversed. It really depends. Some people I have to stay closed off to because, like, you're not worth my energy or time.
Yeah.
And I think when people hear closed, they just get like so uppity and like they want to like start raiding and wanting to pillage everything and break the walls down to find out what's going on. And it's like, yeah, no, you don't. Just because you don't know doesn't mean you're supposed to. If somebody wanted you to understand why they code switch, if somebody wanted you to understand why they choose the pronouns that they do, or walk in the shoes that they do, or why, you know what I mean? I feel like way more expressed to live without a bra. You know what I mean? Like you're never going to understand because, my boobs were out to here and you never understood when they went down to this. You know what I mean? Like you didn't live with that.
Yeah.
I can give you like one thing I'm very glad I did the day of my surgery was that I took a picture of me the morning of. And I took a picture of me when I got home that evening. And I still have those two pictures, and it is still wild to even me that was me before and this is me now. Like I'm just like you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of white people, when it comes to like closed practices of like people of colors, like work that they do, I'm not saying that the gods, you know what I mean, or the Orishas, or the land spirits, or the Lanvatir, or these like folklore-based witches, or the mighty dead don't talk to you. I'm not saying that can't happen. I'm saying I will not give you the keys, per Hecate, to come on in here.
Yeah.
Unless you come with some respect, unless you come with some dignity, some character, some gumption, if you will, and listening ears. If you're inherently going to talk over me, try and tell me what my experience is, whether I'm non-binary, a person of color, I can teach classes on heathenry, I can teach classes within the realms of runes, the Norse pantheon, witchcraft in general. Yeah, it's a no for me, dog. It's a no.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think also that in some closed practices, they're closed because some of these practices or specific, even just covens, let's just go with
Mhm,
covens. Do you think
mhm,
that some covens are closed? And let's say also in this instance that these covens are predominantly, if not all, women. So
mhm,
do you think that they're closed because there is this, it's a space for reclamation of power and
mhm.
identity that has been
Sometimes.
diminished by male and
Oh,
white society, and that's why they need to
yes.
be closed?
Yes. I mean, here's here's the thing, like, I think people always think that, like, no matter who you meet, you know what I mean, whether you talk to Jazz or you talk to me of our coven, I find it funny that people think that, like, just because we're so feminine presenting doesn't mean that somebody's not non-binary or whatever. It's just so, like, I always hear this thing and it's funny. I find it always funny as someone who's been around this block millions of times. Oh my God. Well, I just never felt really welcomed to come to your open rituals because, like, there's so many feminine presenting people. What? What? What you mean? What you mean, Joe? I don't understand. Here's my thing. You only know the outside of us. And when we do give you a time and space to come to our open rituals, it's your internal bias that you use due to your own insecurities, really. Let's be real here. It's your insecurity keeping you from coming to the times where we do say, hey, you can come through. You can legit come through. We invited you. Oh my God. You got the DM and everything. Come on through. You can't put that on us that we invited you and you don't come.
Yep.
That's kind of like you're giving us a bias. It's like, but we're actually open to show you the way, but we're not going to show you every way. Like, that's kind of the point, like, especially with the way, we're one of the very few covens left in our area. So to me, it's funny when all these people come up, usually to Jazz, and they're just like, oh my God, I just like never felt welcomed. Well, I mean, like, bruh, like, I don't know how to tell you that you feel very weird about feminine energy when half of the people may not even have that energy. Like, I feel bad when most people are like standing near me because they're always like, oh, well, Sydney's like so nice and she's so quiet. And then during ritual, I'm a whole other bitch. I'm always like, girl, what? Girl, get over here. What we doing? What are you even doing? Come over here. Yes, 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 over here. Yes, right. Of course. Duh. Girl, if you're not going to eat that, I'm going to. So you making an option, or like, I'm a whole other person in my ritual spaces. And I'm just like, you don't have access to that because you're not initiated. And it's not that you can't, it's just if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, like how we have to put ourselves in positions to be uncomfortable around your majority ass, then I don't I don't know what to tell you.
Yep.
I don't know what to tell you. It's really hard. What do you want me to say? Do you want me to like baby you through it? Do you want me to like, be like, babe, it's okay. You can cut. Like, no, if you got the DM, you did, and if you didn't, sorry and shit.
Also, if you are entering into witchcraft specifically, let's break
Okay.
that down. Witch,
Okay.
I know that that's a gender neutral term now,
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
but like, let's go back through history, and I'm talking about before the Salem witch trials.
Phew.
It was considered just a woman's path. Like, it was a word to describe a woman that was outside of society's norms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's always been and always will be, in my opinion, a very heavy female energy, goddess energy path, like inherently. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can't, in my opinion, you cannot strip the goddess and the divine feminine out of witchcraft and it still be witchcraft, in my opinion.
So I find that interesting too because like I feel like most of the time when masculine presenting people or cis men in general want to be in spaces, they just create them and it's fine. When Crowley's like, hey, kind of just want to have a party in here, get a little crazy. I'm pansexual actually. Really open to a lot of things, baby. Real open to things. And I think you should be a Scarlet Woman. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, it's so funny that men can just like get up and just be like, yeah, it's my world and I'm living here. And well, you're a woman. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I can't. Oh my God, you have your own space.
The women are doing it for themselves.
Oh my God. You mean the Scarlet Woman doesn't just become hot and I can do the great right with her?
I
She
think
has like her own feminine wiles that she be doing out in them woods by herself.
I think we have to remember that even witch itself is a reclaimed word. Like, witch,
Finally.
witch was an insult,
It was.
like a horrible insult
I
to
mean,
call a
so
woman a
so
witch.
is so is pagan and so is heathen too.
Yep, yep.
You
So was
know?
warlock. Yeah,
Okay, right. Exactly. And I think people don't realize these are just to me, like yes, do I think in certain spaces, yeah, like the divine feminine is always going to be the divine feminine. But I also feel like if you like the lover's card in tarot, you know, associated with Gemini, mercurial energy here, if you don't have the mask nor the femme, which as a non-binary person, I still struggle with that. I still struggle with what my masculine presenting energy is internally, as opposed to my inherently hyper femme qualities that I've been growing into through Venus. But baby, I still got an Aries moon. I got all war in me. Like I've had to work with my Venus, but when it comes to like my war, that's easy. And I think people don't get that is like if you don't feel one way or the other like I do, like in my experience, then it's like how hard do you think it is for me to figure out what the hell I'm even wearing in the morning, let alone what the fuck I'm doing with my practice? I mean, shit. Like, started with Anubis, started with the pen. And then, now I can work with these goddesses. Now I can see kind of these psychopomp type of idealisms, but that wasn't there before. That takes time, And I don't know. I feel like more people get scared of the idea that like women or like feminine energy will take over, which I'm just like, it's funny because we're in the year of the chariot and we're also in the year of chariot being associated with Cancer. So be open to the fact that you're going to get in your feelings a lot this year and it's going to be a big spiritual awakening and you're going to get stuck in that chariot and you're going to fall off that chariot and it's going to get stuck in the mud sometimes before it gets to move. like like if you really want to get scared, last year we were in the year of Gemini. Okay. 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 This year it's water. It's all cardinal moving water. So like You're gonna have to get in touch with your feelings, babe. Like maybe be open to the open invites and maybe be closed to the closed invites because they ain't coming to you.
As someone who is a sun Cancer, I approve this message. So we have gone so over our time.
Yes, usually. Yes.
So I think it's very clear that this conversation is not over. We
Never.
have so much more we could say, and I love that. So this is me formally asking you to please come back. Please
I'll
come
be
back.
back. I'll be
Okay,
back. I
thank
will
you.
be back.
Because I think there's a lot more things that we could talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like the rapport that we have when talking about controversial things. So
Absolutely.
I would love to have you back for something like that.
Yes.
Yes. So I want to ask you one last question before we
Okay.
leave.
Okay.
And it's the basic of most basic questions. But I do think it is a very important question.
Okay.
What advice do you have for people who are just getting into or wanting to get into witchcraft? And not the adults. This question, I like it to be geared mainly towards the kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I know that there are so many teenagers who are stuck in homes where they cannot really explore witchcraft. I mean, I was that teenager.
Mm-hmm. Same.
And I know that it is easier for them now because of the internet, and for that I am jealous.
Same. Same.
But I know that a lot of them do have to jump through hoops even on the internet because they have some parents who put up the firewalls and the passwords and
Good
you know.
Lord, they do.
Yeah. So for the kids who have found this video,
Mm-hmm.
they are listening to everything you have to say, writing it in their journal. What do you have to say to those kids who are wanting to get into witchcraft? They know it's pulling on something within them. Where should they begin?
I think you should begin within. That's kind of something. If I could tell, baby Sydney, baby Crafton, hey
Yeah.
girl, this is where we go. I would say go internally, have a hermit card moment, because a lot of like the inherent beliefs you have are already there. Then the books or the blog post or the TikToks or the Instagram post or whatever you find in the interwebs, that confirms what you're feeling. Or it doesn't. It either resonates or it doesn't. I feel like if you really, really want to get in the craft now, you have to learn to take things, and I say this as a person who follows the moon cycles, but per lunar cycle, give yourself 30 days because it usually takes about 21 days to develop a habit. So that's very close to a moon cycle there. And give yourself time to learn one topic for 30 days. If it ends up being that, let's say, right now we're in the new moon, or the dark moon, as I like to call it, in Aquarius. In the next dark moon, where will you be? Definitely journaling. That's something I wish I had kept with my old pieces of things I originally would write down. Try not to copy what the words are saying because you think you're learning somebody else's way. Try to sit with it and put it in your own words. So if you say, like, the full moon is in Leo or something, what does that feel like to you? Like, get close to your clairs here. Are we clairsentient, claircognizant, clairvoyant? You know what I mean? Get into the itty bitty gritty of those. There's also way more books on introductory perspectives. Our book club is actually reading one which I actually brought to the table, and a lot of people are kind of struggling to read it, even myself. And it's because the book is introductory, but it's kind of like created like a really gorgeous graphic textbook. It's called Untamed Witch. Definitely a good book. I feel like it's going to be one I'm still going to reference. There's a lot of other creators out there. If you're a person of color, there are way more spaces that are being created now for us than there were 10 years ago. Those spaces do exist. You just have to find your people, and that takes time. Who you vibed with for 3 moon cycles may not be who you vibed with for a year and a day. You know, like you don't know. Some people are for a reason and some people are for a season. And you will very much figure out who that is, because if all your energy goes into this person and nothing's being given back, you already know that's not reciprocation. You already know that's not what the gods would want for you. You already know that's not what your spirits, your ancestors, the mighty dead, the beloved dead, the Landvatir would want for you. So you're going to have to dig deeper, and you're going to have to be uncomfortable. Because unfortunately, a lot of the elders and sages don't always have the enthusiasm they did when they got in the craft. So we love that you have dreams, but what did it mean? Do you have a dream journal? Have you created an entire thing? I'm very big as an art witch into coloring. That's another way to meditate. Everybody thinks you got to sit down and do the, oh, no, baby. I meditate while making cookies, okay? I meditate while coloring. I meditate while, journaling out my day and figuring out what I need to finish for the day or get done for the day. So those are things I would say. And also too, I'm your auntie in the occult, so you can always drop a DM. I'm always here, always queer, and always ready to help. Okay. It may take me a while. I might be up at 3 a.m. I might not be. But I love you and I'm here for you, baby.
Well said. Well said. I too would say don't get caught up in the tools of witchcraft.
Takes so much time.
Yeah, don't think because, oh, I'm 15 years old and I can't build an altar and I can't have an athame right now, so I can't practice witchcraft.
No. They got these cute little something I'm going to be working on in the next couple weeks, actually, content-wise. So look out for that. But nowadays they got these cute little like pine wood pieces at the Dollar Tree, and I found one that has a star, like it's like a little star wand, and that's really going to be fun. So it can, I mean, hell, I'm in my 30s and I like my like athame is literally like this cute little Aldi knife I have that literally is blue and it has floral printing on it, and it's a ceramic knife. Like, she gets used all the time.
I don't think you can see it, but my wand is a stick that I found in the woods when I was 12.
Exactly.
My athame is a piece of wood I found that same summer when I was 12 and carved with my pocket knife into a point.
Yes. Okay. It's so inherent. It's so intuitive. We know what we need when we need it. I didn't need a cauldron until like 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't know how to start using oils until I started learning like how the herbs worked. Like it all takes time. Give yourself time. Give yourself the grace of the gods.
You don't have to know it all at once.
Hell the fuck no. That's the whole point of being on a crooked spiral path, is that it's continuously going. It's not going to stop.
And if you did know it all at once, how boring. What do you do after that?
Oh my God, don't be Crowley. Nobody needs to spend like college money like they did it on him to just be an influence.
Okay, we are rambling. We are just going on and on.
We are.
Stop. As I said, this conversation is clearly not over. Yes. You must come back to the channel.
I will be back.
And for those of you who stuck through this whole interview / just chit chat is what it turned into.
Yes.
I thank you. I honor you. And Crafton, tell everybody where they can find you.
Now, I'm on the interwebs, baby. I know, it's a great big wild world. But you can find me at Sydney.Glenn on the Instagrams. Send a DM every now and again if you'd like. I'm always here. Love a good meme. Love a good meme. It's a great offering for me. I'm on the Facebooks. I'm probably going to change my name soon, so you'll be able to find me under Crafton Magick, and I'll be posting more content because I'm starting to finally get into my art witchery and how it works for me. So we won't be too far gone.
Great, and those links will be down below.
Mhm.
Crafton, thank you so much again. Seriously,
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Absolutely. I missed you.
And thank you everyone for listening to us. And share down below what your thoughts were on this and who you want to see next on Mystic Meetings. Our next guest is, he's going to kill me if I say this wrong.
Oh.
But our next guest is going to be Zraborno Aiden.
Oh.
Who is a practitioner, who is a practitioner of the very eclectic traveler faith.
Okay.
So you may know that as like Roma and slurs that we do not say.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But they practice something that is, I believe, if I've done my research correctly, is not Roma, but is of the traveler community.
Okay.
They are Draborno.
Oh.
So, stay tuned for that. And thank you so much, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye.